Wake up, everybody. This is the History You Forgot podcast, the podcast where three veteran teachers with 90 years of teaching experience try to catch you up on the stuff you slept through when you were younger. And on this episode, guys, we're going over there for the war in Europe. It's World War I, so buckle up. Here it comes. I'm Jason Schmoida.
I'm Jeff Breedlove.
And I'm Jason Jones. And this is the History You Forgot podcast. And we're going to start this off, guys, with a drink.
Yeah.
A new drink.
Heck yeah.
And guess what?
There's no bourbon in it.
No bourbon. So this is called the French 75.
French 75.
French 75. And we've been asked by some followers to kind of tell you what's in it. And so we're going to give you a little bit of the recipe. The ingredients are gin, fresh lemon juice, simple syrups, and actually champagne, which, France, champagne,
It works.
But
It
the French 75 is named after the 75 millimeter French artillery gun that was used during the war. You could shoot it very rapidly. And if you know anything about trench warfare, artillery was a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say, it kind of sets us up perfect, right? For the World War I being different than any other war before.
Yeah,
right?
the war to end all wars.
So to speak. Hey, for this toast, guys, we'd like to shout out Jeremy. Jeremy is the guy who's really kind of taught us what we were doing here, did a lot of our editing for us, and he's turned it over to us, and we're thrilled because we wouldn't be here without his help. So, Jeremy, here's to you, man.
Here's to you, Jeremy. Thank you.
Woo!
I'm not normally a gin guy, but
Yeah.
Not bad. Not
Put it-
bad.
Put enough lemon in it. Or champagne. Exactly.
You can show anything.
Yeah. So I suppose some background context, boys. Is that where we get started?
I think that's where we go.
Yeah.
I think, like Mr. Jones just said, right, with the French 75 being some sort of new artillery, I think we'll start with this rapid militarization, right, that's going on in the second half of the 19th century. The numbers are sort of staggering, right? Last kind of all-in war would have been sort of Franco-Prussian or Austria-Prussian war, but it hasn't been a really good, in the sense of everybody player since industrialization. So we're going to have new weapons. We're going to have technologically superior weapons. Rifles are going to be better. Machine guns are going to come into play. Airplanes, tanks, troop transports. I mean, all of that right off the bat. But I think we also need to talk about the fact that there's an arms race, right? Europe is literally engaging in an arms race between, I think, the end of the Franco-Prussian War, 1870, and 1914. The military expenditures for the five European big powers quadruples, right? From around $100 million all in to about 400, literally quadruples. So I guess that would be maybe billion, not even million, I guess. But
Wow.
The quadrupling, I think, is what's important, right? Because everybody knows that everybody's all in.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is how we're going to compete. And I think that the other fact that I sort of kind of thought was staggering was that the number of soldiers, of troops, permanent armies, right, are now a thing. So by the time the war begins, there are, between the big five, 18 million soldiers trained, ready to go, right? So even when the war starts, and there's always a little lag, right, where they train new troops or bring in, we're already at a staggering amount of people who are ready to go to war. Like that permanent army, I think, always is such an important factor, right? We're not talking about having, it goes to your earls, and then your earls go to their villages, and their villages go find their knights. And so the war is going to happen pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a slippery slope, 30 days, right, from a catalytic event. But I think that mustard gas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's another one. So
Submarines.
Airplanes,
U-boats, and all of it. So I think that is always, I think, a great context, right, for that war, which I think then sets us up, right? You've got everybody having powers, and then a new state, new country on the horizon, right? If he's kind of driving the bus.
Yeah, for sure. And if you remember from past episodes, we've used the term main, and militarism is the M for main. And I'm going to talk about alliances and the new country, and really countries, with Italy and Germany. Everybody thinks of Italy and Germany as these countries that have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. and Italy and Germany both unified in 1870.
Yes.
Became unified countries. There were Germanic states, there were Italian city-states before that, but they're the ones that are going to unify and become a threat to Great Britain and to the United States and to France, but not just militarily, but also in the Industrial Revolution and the push for economics. But A is alliances, and Otto von Bismarck is the chancellor who unifies Germany. And he has all sorts of backdoor alliances, right? He's got the European League, which actually has Russia as a part of it. Which, when the war starts, Russia's on the other side, right? He's got alliances eventually with the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. So the Triple Entente ends up being Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary.
You can have a triple, what is it, a triple emperor?
Yes, I'm sorry, you do.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean,
it's not confusing at all.
Yeah, the Emperor's League. Emperor's League was actually Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Russia. And then I hope I said that right. The Triple Alliance, which is going to be Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. I think I said that just backwards. And the Triple Entente, which is going to be Russia, France, and Great Britain.
That makes sense.
And just real quickly, the whole idea of the alliances in Bismarck's mind was, how do I not have a two-front war? Two fronts meaning one on the west side of me and one on the east side of me, and deter countries from attacking each other. And these alliances are supposed to do that.
Well, and I'd add a question in there. So the idea of this would be also why the countries around Germany feared its unification, right? They feared that surge of power, if you will.
Yeah. What you have to remember is that Germany unifies through war, right?
Right.
I mean, it goes after the countries that it fears would stop it, right? So it's looking at a map and it says, okay, so there's this giant Austria-Hungary to our south, and we're going to take care of them. And there's this France,
which is
to the west.
Which is funny because Austria-Hungary really is an ally, but they do fool Austria-Hungary into a brief war with Schleswig-Holstein, where they gain that territory. And France wants revenge, right? France loses the Austro-Prussian War. Am I saying that right, Franco? Golly, that's two mistakes.
We're done.
That's two mistakes. I apologize. Franco-Prussian War, and believe it or not, that was Otto von Bismarck versus Napoleon III, right, who was the leader of France at the time.
Crazy.
And
yeah.
But anyway, so they want revenge, and that's the other thing Bismarck doesn't want is France to attack.
I think your point about the Franco-Prussian War is really important, right? Because that war reset sort of the balance of power, right, with the alliances. Nobody really knows where those alliances are happening, so they're secret. Bismarck's the only one, and he gets ousted, right, by the Kaiser and the Emperor, and all of a sudden then they come to light.
Yeah.
It's really important. But the Franco-Prussian War, I think, for one more second, is that France is beaten so soundly, right, by the new Germany, Prussia, that it is reeling. I mean, it's just staggering after. Government, Napoleon III is ousted, and it leads to a revolution.
Right.
France. It was an Olympic sport. France was gold.
In France, before that, was the big kid on the block. Okay. Right? They were the big kid on the block.
So the revolution, though, also throttles France, right? So
for sure.
It's a decade or two of complete social, military, economic upheaval.
Right.
And when this war comes around, they're
right. Yeah. Right. And this is really the second big French Revolution, not the fourth. Yeah.
Well, would that get us to a point where we could talk about what they were all competing over? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, and ultimately, I always, when I frame, MAIN, militarism, alliances, imperialism, nationalism, I always say, if you want to put it in chronological order in your brain, working order, imperialism may come first, because ultimately it's what led to the arms race. It's kind of what led to some of the buddying up and palling up with the bigger countries, smaller countries. And ultimately it's what, at the end, nationalism kind of crashes, which is this imperialism, this idea of, we were talking about competing empires, right?
Right.
And I've always looked at this from the United States point of view, which we were in it, claiming not to be, but in it, right? But if you look at a map of Europe,
all those are perfect maps.
we're gonna get a map up here somehow, right? Because when you look at a map of Europe, there's very few periods in history where Europe, you can't just tell, must be in conflict,
Right.
because of all the borders and all the different groups of people, and they're all competing for ports. They're competing for resources. They're competing for power, and sometimes just bragging rights, right? I mean,
Right. Well, and I think it's important to remember too that driving around Europe is like driving around our country, going from state to state.
yeah,
Right. Their countries are much smaller.
Not even state to state.
Right.
It's like the whole thing could fit in.
And yeah, right.
Right.
So,
right.
so it's much different than what we're used to as Americans driving around in our own
Well,
country.
I think I'm not that same kind of imperialism. Imperialism has been going on for a long time in here. Like, it isn't new.
Right. Right.
It's just that now with industrialization, there is this complete have to have access to natural resources.
Right.
Right. That's the only thing that's driving industrialization. Like you said, Europe is locked in terms of territory,
Mhm.
so they have to go outside of it.
So I'm curious, do you guys think that's what has to do? We've had world wars before. We haven't called them world wars.
I'd agree.
Right. So is this the one that was just so big and covered so much territory around the globe with the new weaponry? Do you think that's why we've suddenly decided world war is the term?
I would say yes. And the reason I would say yes is because you had, at this point, it was the British Empire, right? So they had India and other places like that were providing support.
Mhm.
You had all of Africa that had been imperialized by European powers. And that was economically, they wanted those resources and new markets to sell their products. And so even though there was great nationalism and pride in one's country, and there's the militarism that's going on, economically, everybody's pocketbook matters, right? And
Absolutely,
so I would say yes.
Okay.
I would too, and I would think that I always put the linchpin, right, as that creation of the German state.
Yeah.
Because once they do form, right, by 1870, the phrase that comes up is always, Germany's looking for their place in the sun. Which
Mhm.
everybody has an empire, right?
Mhm.
There are pots around the world, like Portugal, Spain had one, and like all of it, like you said, France, so Germany is a part of that, which is why they carve up Africa the way they do, right? As Germany says they're being left out, they carve up Africa in a way, so Germany gets a couple little, states. So I agree with Jason. I think that you're going to have not only far-flung territories,
Mhm.
but you have colonial peoples who are going to be fighting on all sides with the hope, right, of a sort of nationalistic autonomy, right? The deal in India or South Africa's mind is we fight for the British.
Yeah.
The British win. They're going to grant us sovereignty.
Right.
And, it doesn't work out necessarily.
Well,
but
the other thing that's fascinating with imperialism is you've got fledgling Germany, who's just defeated France, right, in the Franco-Prussian War. And they're the ones who say, I got it right. They're the ones who say, hey, everybody's trying to take their piece of Africa. We're going to set up the Berlin Conference, and we're going to invite all the European leaders, no African leaders, because they knew they weren't ready for a world war yet, right? They could defeat a country, but they aren't going to defeat multiple countries. So let's sit down and talk about how we're all going to have our piece of the pie when it comes to Africa.
Yeah.
And that's really brilliant on Bismarck's part. And it gives Germany 25 more years to get ready.
Right.
And also,
Interesting.
Tone. I think it's a good point where, remember, Germany's a little late-ish to the whole sort of industrial revolution because they haven't necessarily, they're rich and they're powerful, but not being unified, right? They're not acting in an economic sort of union.
Yeah.
Once they unify, industrialization comes to the new Germany like lickety split.
Yeah.
They're ready for it. They have natural resources, pioneer things like energy and pharmaceuticals, right? They're on it. So for them, this sort of economic catch up, right, is also connected to we're going to have markets. And it's like you said,
they're very driven.
They're very driven. And I think that
I've heard you say before, and this just what you're saying right now would really be a good place to put this in there. That's comparison to maybe like modern day China, the last 50 years of China to some extent with the modernization, the technology, and they're ready to go prove fair.
I agree.
I think
so.
in that time frame. Yeah.
piggybacking on, Great Britain, which industrialized 150 years earlier, and then
Right.
France came after it. And then, so it's what I know, it's industrialization 2.0, maybe.
Mhm, mhm.
Like China now has the advantage of all of the other technology that's
True.
come before. They're not inventing old,
Yeah.
they're playing on the new.
Right.
Germany has that advantage,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is what's going to come later into play, right? When Germany loses, not to spoiler alert, right? One of the ways that we're going to kind of get them back is economically, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to take.
Right. And so what we're really talking about here is nationalism.
At the end of
Germany
the day.
has an unbelievable belief in themselves that they are better than everybody else. They are the best country.
And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
pan-Germanism too, right?
Yeah.
They're also
Oh, yeah.
looking at a whole region as Germanic,
Right.
and German-speaking people that
Yeah.
goes beyond their borders, right? So that's
Yep.
going to be in play here a lot. But I think the nationalism piece for you, the U.S. history part
I
of
am
it,
the United States.
I mean, it's also important. I mean, you can talk about this, but the U.S. is kind of in the game-ish,
a little bit.
in the sense of like
Mhm.
our own sense of ourselves as a
Yep.
more solid.
They don't want to be. I mean, we're so, last time we talked, we were in the Civil War, but since the Civil War, the United States has hop, skipped, and jumped through some stuff, right? We've had our own industrialization and Gilded Age and reforms at home, but abroad, we've stretched out a little bit. The same spirit that brought us Manifest Destiny really is now taking us abroad. And I would say kind of the big bang for American imperialism is the Spanish-American War in 1898. And we acquire Cuba, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Guam. But if you think about that, that puts us in all corners of the world.
Right.
And why? It's very similar to what these European countries are saying. We're along that same line as if you've ever heard of Rudyard Kipling's poem, White Man's Burden, right? There's this concept in Europe, and it has certainly made its way into America too, that there is some superiority there, and that we're actually benefiting the rest of the world by intervening and taking Cuba, taking the Philippines, and things of that nature. And
More like us.
Well,
and it's that Americanizing them from our perspective. Yeah, that's a common word.
and
so.
I'm sure you guys do this too, but whenever I talk about Rudyard Kipling,
Mhm.
I always really quickly say this is his viewpoint.
Oh,
This is
absolutely. Yeah.
Mr. Jones's viewpoint.
Yeah.
Right.
I hope
But
I
I
made
love
that
that.
clear.
You did.
Yeah, but what I
Yeah.
love about it too is he's the child of like missionaries, right? So
Yeah.
you would think,
Right.
he's kind of got this first hand, but
But that's part of it, Mission. That
when
was
you read it the first time, you're like, oh, hey, and then you read it again with a little subtext,
Right.
and you're like, oh,
it was so in the United States, it was William McKinley, President McKinley, when we were debating taking the Philippines, he said we're going to lift them up. He called, first of all, this is brutal, but he called them our little brown brothers to begin with. But so we're going to lift them up, Americanize them, democratize them, and Christianize them. So all of those components come together to form that nationalistic thing.
yeah. And I think
So-
what's important to also note here that use of the media to sort of
Mhm.
continually play that up. Right? I mean, propaganda, right, to depict these
Well-
sort of saviors, and then these sort of
Well,
native untouched.
in Britain, they even had children's books that were written and
Yep.
said, that, and I'm not going to quote this correctly, but
But it's a private
Yeah.
baby patriots.
yeah,
Right.
something about, Britain's the best because they have the most land out there that they're in control
Mhm.
of.
In the United States, there were political cartoons. Political cartoons were really becoming the thing now in newspapers and magazines. There's a lot mostly initially promoting this idea too. So, yeah.
And I think that plays into a couple other things, right? I mean, post-industrial revolution, we've got a much more literate populace.
Right.
For sure.
We have people now who are relying on newspapers and magazines, so those become significantly more powerful
Yeah.
in terms of media. Everybody's reading them for the latest news, which is what's going to get us into the Spanish-American War, right?
Yeah.
With Hearst.
Mhm.
But I also think the thing about colonies we didn't mention is that with everybody now competing militarily, colonies also provide you with navy bases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? And if Great Britain has ruled the seas now for 100 years or so and been totally dominant at it, the U.S. now coming along,
Yeah.
Germany and France, their colonies become ports,
Right.
And that's
And-
significant.
For
And
sure.
you may have said this earlier, but I'll say it again just in case that like South Africa you mentioned, or India, or you picked the colony, they supported in creating goods, but they also supported in providing soldiers.
And buying the goods back.
Right.
I mean, you gotta remember that
Yep.
it's a one-sided practice, right?
It's
Imperialism really benefits.
Resources and markets, right?
Right.
Resources and
Yeah.
markets. Yeah.
And I think that is. I think that the nationalism, that last letter, right, MAIN for nationalism, I think I don't necessarily think about it when I think about World War I necessarily, but it is it's definitely what's going to cause the catalyst, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
going to be the event, right? It's all about
Yeah.
Balkan nationalism, and you've got Austria-Hungary, which is fracturing. I mean, like Russia. I mean, everybody.
Right.
I feel like the nationalism really comes into play after, and I know we're eventually going to get to a spark that starts the war, but I feel like nationalism really comes to play there when you have members of all these nations sitting at a table trying to negotiate what should be an out to this, and everyone is basically saying, I can't be the one to get out. I can't be the one to get out. And Germany's like, look, this is our shot.
Right.
And,
Well,
well,
and you think about too the huge empires, right? Austria-Hungary is a huge empire that after World War I ends up being probably 8 countries, 9 countries.
Yeah.
You've got the Balkan Peninsula that is controlled partially by Austria, and a lot of people in that region that all want their own nation.
Mhm.
So nationalism doesn't have to just be with a country. It can be with a group of people that we want our own sovereign nation.
Yeah, which I think is actually, when you just touched on Austria-Hungary, remember something else we haven't touched about is that part of the balance of power issue going on here is the decline of the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
Right. The Ottoman Empire has been supremely powerful in that sort of, Middle Eastern Mediterranean region, with Turkey and Greece and all the way up and down. It's fracturing quickly. It's got a bunch of revolutions, and it's economically behind, and everybody else, we're going to see a couple of wars pop up, and everybody else wants that territory.
Right.
It's critical for them, especially Russia. If you're looking at, imperialism,
right.
They need warm water ports,
The Mediterranean.
And you could argue that Austria-Hungary is actually not as strong as they were before.
Absolutely.
And even Russia.
Absolutely.
Right.
For sure.
As you see Italy and Germany and
there was a lot of social
Britain,
unrest
France.
and political unrest in Russia. That was dogging them as well.
I think it's partly also that they're sort of the remaining autocratic, empires, monarchies, right? I mean, Russia, Germany, Austria-Hungary, even Italy a little bit, even though it's more democratic. They're still ruled by what you and I would kind of the legacy of these absolute monarchs.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
a dynasty.
They are a dynasty, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
It's that literally luckiest 0.0001% of family it's been, and people are now looking around the world. Most of Europe, the United States, parts of Central and South America have become democracies, or at least republics.
Right.
And everybody's reading the paper, and everybody knows it's happening. That why can't we?
Yeah. And I think we need to remember too that you mentioned democracies in the Western Hemisphere. Most of Central South America and the Caribbean islands by the mid to late 1800s had gotten their independence. Right. So, right. And so there literally are a lot more democracies, even though not all the governments in Central South America were democracies. But
I think that we can probably talk about the context. I mean, because it is way bigger, right, than anything. It's not, one simple thing.
Correct.
The catalyst, is that kind of chemical reaction that lights the fuse, but the fuse has been lit. I think we even talked about everybody is looking forward to this war.
Yeah.
Yes.
People, young men are excited, right? Governments are seeing this as an opportunity to kind of not only expand their borders, but to also sort of quell social unrest, right? You've got women who are going after, the vote. You've got ethnic minorities. You have new groups. You have socialists. You've got burgeoning communists. And it's kind of roiled Europe for a while. And the war could sort of lay that all flat because everyone chips in for the war. Governments are looking to kind of,
I think I had a teacher in high school, or maybe it was college, use the word purge Europe of unrest and people that weren't maybe desired and
extreme influence.
And so in terms of catalysts, we've mentioned this before in the show, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but one of the big catalysts was the Franco-Prussian War, right? And just to real quick hit on it again, Otto von Bismarck, after he's gonna want to unify Germany. This war is going to allow that to really solidify that unification. It makes France really take a step back, or I don't know if they get in the back seat of the car, but they're definitely now at least equals with Germany, and they don't like that because they've, like I said earlier, they've been the big kid on the block. So
that has quickly fallen away.
Yeah, and so again, the alliances of the Main, that is Bismarck's idea to keep France at bay and a two-front war at bay. So that's the first catalyst that we probably should talk about. But then there's other wars that are part of
little sort of like, powder keg kind of wars, right? And the Balkans
I like that word.
is literally the powder keg of Europe, right? There's
Mhm.
these great political cartoons of the age, which sort of have Europeans as personification of people, and literally in the middle of all of this, soldiers pointing at each other, and Germany pointing
Mhm.
both ways, and Russia's a big bear. The Balkans is a roast sort of barbecue.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is it true that Balkans means broken? I've heard that. I've heard that.
I don't know that.
I've heard that Balkans means broken. Yeah, that's yes, because it makes all the sense in the world. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think in the Balkans, right, it's the nationalism is in play, the fracturing of Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire.
Mhm.
So on a map again, right, you've got this sort of southern European part, right, that is straddling between Austria-Hungary to the north, the Ottomans sort of to the south, and you've got some pretty major ethnic groups and large contingencies of people.
Absolutely.
You've got Serbs, Croats, you've got
Slavs.
others, lots, and you've got Bulgarians and others,
Greeks.
right? I mean, so the key here is that before the war even starts, right, there is a couple little battles, right, and that are all about nationalism, right? You've got the First Balkans War, which is going to be a move by Bulgaria, right, to create their own independence, and they're all going to basically declare war right on the Ottomans, and they're going to. Ottomans are going to lose, and now Bulgaria is going to be like, well, here we need to be this. And the Serbs are like, no, you don't get that. We get to be this. And Russia's over here going, well, we're also kind of Slavic, and we should have a place. And now, so everybody is playing these people off of each other, right? Which that war lasts about a year. So the Second Balkans War is going to pop up, right? Because now you've got, I think it's Romania right now is feeling left out of the pie, right? And they're going to declare war on, I think it's Greece. Don't quote me on these, right? But they are literally fighting constantly over who gets more land, and all of the larger European powers are stoking the fire, knowing that they're like proxy wars,
right?
Oh yeah,
right. You know what I mean? In the sense that they're big
then
players, but they're not involved. But
and then you still have the empires trying to hold on as well.
Absolutely,
right?
So it ends up at the end of these Balkan wars. You have really powerful ethnic groups all claiming sovereignty over certain areas. The empire's not willing to give it to them.
Yep.
A couple of countries do get carved out. I think Bulgaria and something else. But it's the Serbs believe themselves to be the leaders of the Balkans, right?
Right.
I mean, so these wars are going to set us up for this explosion of nationalism, which is going to come together. With the catalytic end here, which we'll get to, I think, in a couple of minutes. But
yeah,
I think we need to chat about. I mean, if we talk about these wars, I mean, the other issue we keep hitting on, but we have to talk is balance of power. Is off.
Is very off.
Well, and it's this concept of imperialism, and everybody's competing, right? And everybody needs. We've talked about kind of the key issues to it is resources, right? Germany's on the cutting edge. Everybody around Germany is a little bit afraid of Germany. Britain has been kind of losing ground in the globe. France has been losing ground in the globe, right? If I'm not mistaken, that means Germany's a new player that can take some power. When we look at Russia's had a lot of internal strife, a lot of political issues. Nicholas II's under, right? Nicholas II, that's right, right?
Correct.
He's under an enormous amount of pressure from within to feed people and to stop losing wars.
Right.
Right. I mean,
which is kind of a hard thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Russia has been trying to flex their muscle, and from Japan to Prussia to what was the other one? Russia's been in a bad shape, right? Not to mention their own internal strife.
Yeah, and one thing I think it's important to say about Russia is they're at least 100 years behind the rest of Europe.
In terms of,
That's fair.
In terms of industrialization, militarism, just all of it.
That's a good point.
They're just way behind.
Well, and
one could argue, I'm sorry, well,
no,
they
go.
still have the most sort of strongest remnant of an absolute monarchy, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, the Tsar is all powerful, and with all this wind of change, Russia is trying to figure this out.
Is that still the Romanov dynasty?
It is.
It is, right?
It is, yeah.
Right.
And you have to remember too, real fast, these empires, the Ottoman, the Austria-Hungary, the Hohenzollern's, right, in Germany, even the Tsars in Russia, they've been in power for like 300 years, right? These are not fly-by-night dynasties. They are clinging to the last hope right, of this sort of imperial dynasty.
Well,
Mhm.
it's
yeah.
not going to last.
And what makes Russia intriguing as an ally is they can just throw so many men at the battlefield.
The sheer amount of people, yeah. But correct me if I'm wrong here. Russia still needs that warm water port. Which is that Black Sea? Am I correct on that?
Yeah.
Am I in the right spot?
That's what they're playing the Balkans is ultimately too, right? I mean, if they have allies in the Balkans,
Yeah.
then they would have access to the Mediterranean,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
yeah.
I think the balance of power issue here is beyond even what we're talking about a little bit in the sense that it's just all unknown,
Right.
right? We've had settled like borders forever. We've had settled dynasties in power forever. We've had a series of revolutions, but conservatives have taken charge back, right? We've had a relatively, but now all of a sudden there's all this unknown.
But I think, I don't know, maybe my imagery is wrong here, but like the empires have reached a point where they're crunching into each other, creating some fault lines. Something's got to give. Is that a fair way to look at it? Something's got to give. The United States, just to speak up for us for a minute, are sitting on the outside of this saying, again, this isn't our issue.
Right. Over there.
This has nothing to do with it, although we are in it. Whether we like it or not, it's going to take 3 years for us to actually get in the war, but we really are already going to get mixed up.
Jason, am I right or wrong here? I don't teach American history, but Wilson ran for a second term saying, we'll keep you out of the war.
Yeah. Yeah. So 1916, 3 years, a couple years into the war, at least, Wilson ran under, I kept you out of war. And it was Wilson that took us to war.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, just one quick thing about the warm water port, because I do think that's really important for Russia. And they have fought multiple wars, going back to Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, over Baltic Sea warm water ports, Black Sea warm water ports. Yeah, just because if you think about their coastlines, a lot of the year they are frozen.
I always tell the kids, there's a reason they call it permafrost.
Right.
Break those words down, folks, right? I mean, that so much of Russia lies above the Arctic Circle.
Yeah.
So for them, it's almost like, they do straddle, right, both continents of Asia and Europe. And for them, they have this Western side, which is attempting really to become much more European, right? Seeing themselves as a European power. And you get this Eastern side, which is so far away and so much more Central Asian.
Right.
That, but the play for the Russians is always to kind of put their foot in the West, right? It was just right. They decided that they're the ones we're going to ally with. Yeah. Because they're the sort of the future.
Right.
But they are the future, but Russia hasn't played along with that future.
Yeah, they haven't been able to keep up.
They haven't been able to keep up, right?
Well, my favorite catalyst is, and that's a terrible way to say it because it's an assassination.
Yeah.
But I really enjoy studying the assassination of the Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
And this is what they say is the spark that lit that whole powder keg, right? Talk about the powder keg.
The important thing to think here is, we've just spent 25, 30 minutes, right, laying the groundwork.
Right.
So it's inevitable. So I mean, this war is just waiting for that spark.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's like on bated breath. Like,
so the Archduke he was Wilhelm I, I believe, was the
Joseph was the emperor.
Joseph was the emperor. Joseph. Okay. Joseph was, thank you.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was like an older brother, is a murder, suicide, love triangle.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
So, the empire is resting, right, on Franz Ferdinand. Right?
Yeah. So Joseph the First, or Joseph, maybe he's not the first. Joseph.
I provided Joseph. You're gonna have to decide.
He's the emperor.
Best I could do.
Yeah, he's the emperor.
Yeah,
and Franz Ferdinand is the heir.
He's the heir apparent. Yeah,
and so Franz Ferdinand is going to go to Serbia. He's going to go to Sarajevo. He's going to go there to extend an olive branch, right, a sign of peace to the Serbs,
right? Because inevitably, in all of them, right? I mean, it's the idea is we have to keep this empire together.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send my young sort of, everyone knows he's the next guy.
He was happening.
But I love about this part too is, right, when he decides to go, it's like a quick overnighter.
Right. But takes his wife because it's their anniversary.
Yeah, because they haven't spent a night apart. It's one of these kind of true, actual love marriages. But you can go so down a rabbit hole about this. She is not accepted by the Austrian nobility.
Right, that's right.
She's kind of a black sheep, and so their bond is even tighter. And
Well, and so the fascinating thing here is they could not ride in the same car in Austria. But in Sarajevo, they could. And so that's why they're in the same car during the parade in Sarajevo.
So
go. You go.
And I'll listen.
I'll listen. It is a different thing, but this is that thing. I think is that what if?
Yeah.
About what?
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
So there was a group of Serbian nationalists, right? Known as the
nationalists again. That whole word, right?
Yeah.
Serbian nationalists.
Boy band.
The Black Hand.
The Black Hand.
Yeah.
It's such a great name. So,
that's great.
And they are young.
They're young.
18 years old.
They're recruited. Yeah.
They're recruited, and they have this sort of nationalistic, romantic ideal, right, of their own independence. And so they plot to assassinate the Archduke, not knowing necessarily that his wife is coming and not knowing necessarily how it's going to happen. But there are multiple, 4, I think, who are eventually tasked with somewhere along this parade route.
Yeah.
That, one of them has a bomb and another one has a gun and another one, I mean, that it sort of becomes a comedy of errors, but it's well thought out. But you have to remember they're 17 and 18 years old.
And we know 17 years old. We have an idea how that could go.
So they go to Sarajevo.
Yeah. So
they're in a parade in the car and they are heading to a speech.
Yeah. They're going to go to the governor's mansion. And I can't remember if the river or the street is called the Appel-Croix.
It's the river. It's the key.
Yeah.
Like we call it a key or a K, right? It's the road along at the embankment.
And so they're traveling down this road, and there's multiple cars in the Archduke's group because, his advisors and his, and so, and the interesting thing is at that time for a grenade, there probably were better grenades by the time the war started, but the grenades that the assassins had, you had to hit the firing pin and then throw it. Okay.
Time it.
Seems safe.
Right.
Okay. So here comes the cars down the road, and actually they said that you could hear, if you knew what you're hearing, if you knew what you're listening for, you could hear the assassin. The first couple of assassins chose not to do anything. They chickened out. Yep.
Always.
But the third assassin, second or third assassin, hits that firing pin, chucks the grenade out into the street, and it bounces. And actually, Ferdinand has to put his hand up, and it bounces off his arm and goes behind him, and it explodes and hurts. Yeah, it hurts his people behind him, his advisors behind him. And the interesting thing about all of the and the weapons were old that they were given, but they also were given cyanide capsules. So this kid takes this cyanide capsule that is so old, all it does is make him puke his guts out, and he jumps into the Appel-Croix that has almost no water in it.
Right into the
so he's thinking, I'm either going to drown or I'm going to die from, and
it's a comedy of errors.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Which is what is, right? So third assassin launches a grenade. It doesn't hit except a couple rows back. I think that's the next guy then looks at this and goes, "Oh man, I'm out.
Here's the noise."
And even the last guy with a gun is like, "Okay, this is clearly not for us." And then of course Franz Ferdinand goes, makes his speech.
Yep, angrily.
I'll stop you there because a couple of bombs and they just keep going.
Yeah.
Well, it's so different than Teddy Roosevelt taking a bullet to
yeah, and he gives a speech. Right.
I guess but he does. He goes, and then he hears that some of his entourage has been wounded.
They're in the hospital.
Right. And they want to go back and visit.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, right, nobody quite knows where the hospital is. Right. So they basically retrace the parade route and are kind of, looking for, and unfortunately, and this is I swear to God, the single kind of greatest moment.
Yeah.
They make a right turn on a street that has a Cafe Schuler, I believe it is, right on the corner, where the last assassin, right,
is eating a sandwich.
Eating a sandwich, right? We're going to capital principe.
Right.
They turn the corner and end up at a roadblock. And so now they're stopped, multiple cars, and they have to back up. Right.
Yeah.
So you're literally almost getting a beep.
They're trying to, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in.
No, do it.
They're kind of like trying to do a 3-point turn.
Absolutely.
Right. On a street that's
European street.
Narrow, like a single car driveway. Right. They're trying to,
right.
They're sitting ducks.
And Gabriel Principe takes this as his,
here I go.
Believe this is happening.
Sure.
Runs 10 feet out into the street and fires 2 shots. I believe.
Yeah, he does.
The first one hits his wife.
Yep.
And drops her basically to the scene of the floor, the scene of the car. Second one hits him.
Yep.
I think of the chest. I think it goes in her neck, his chest, or something. And now it's full panic. Everyone jumps on the poor 18-year-old guy. I mean, he's a sitting duck. But the Archduke and his wife are, literally shot point blank range. She dies in his. I mean, the romance about that thing. She dies in his arms.
Right.
She has some long parting words. He then, as he grasps, sort of, dies from his wound, and we've sort of got a war, right? Even though you think about this, Serbia is not a player in terms of a national, like, prominently significant country, but, and I think what we're going to do, I think we're going to go ahead and maybe break this episode
into two. Sure.
I think,
Probably good.
Because we're going to go on and on and on, and clearly we're getting there, but I think we can end this sort of on this notion that what happens then is this quick slide. It's 30 days. Because immediately Austria-Hungary demands an apology from Serbia. Russia's going to step in and go, well, I'm not so sure they need that.
Right.
Germany.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go.
And I don't mean to be a history nerd. I know we're kind of giddy.
We kind of are.
We're kind of giddy.
We do mean to be.
We're kind of giddy talking about an assassination, but not. Austria doesn't want to go to war.
Right.
Germany is like got both hands in their back pushing them, and Austria's like, well, you guys need to do these things. And if I remember correctly, they're like 5 to 10 things on this list, and they do all of them but like one. Yeah. And Germany's like, attack them, go to war.
It's Germany's method.
Yeah.
They know that a war is going to probably more than likely help them,
right,
in some way. And Austria-Hungary is holding off the scenes, and their heir to the throne is dead.
Yeah.
Is dead.
Right. And this is like catastrophic.
Yeah.
An empire based upon a giant lie. Right.
Yeah.
So I think the key here, because I love is that what happens then, right, is this series of events, literally like day by day by day, is that Serbia fails the test, even though sometimes they don't. Russia, though, has sort of, made an effort to say, well, hey, if anybody needs anything, Germany is 100% the blank check, right? They're telling Austria-Hungary, do it, we've got you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these alliances start coming up that nobody knows about.
Right. And France says, we got your back, Russia. But Britain says, well, they're like not saying anything. Right.
They want the rest of Europe to go to war so that their sea dominance,
like they're going to be able to avoid it.
But I mean, I think they do think initially we can avoid this. It's not our war.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is, I do think it's crazy that Russia's supporting Serbia, the Slavs, right? Germany's got their back in Austria-Hungary's, or their hands in Austria-Hungary's back, and then France is trying to support because they signed the alliance. They said they would, and Britain's standing there with their hands behind their back saying,
cheerio.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, and so what happens is this succession of events that goes, right, they fail, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, Russia then comes in, declares war on Germany, I believe, right? So the localize on Austria-Hungary, Germany comes in, France goes, oh, Russia's involved, they step up. And then the British are kind of then held to an earlier alliance, right? This France, Great Britain, and Russia. It's like they're at war. I mean, I think it's really 3 or 4 weeks.
But Britain doesn't get involved until the Germans attack, and they go through Belgium, and
starting.
That's where we'll start next time. But that's what draws Britain in, because they promised to protect Belgium.
And that's what I'm saying. Secret alliances all of a sudden pop up, and nobody knows who's on either side. And so this happens like it's like popcorn popping. Yeah. Right. It's like instead of jumping out of the kernel, everyone's like,
we got to give a plug for the World War I Museum here in our own city.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. We have the National World War I Museum in our own city. It's unbelievable. It's worth your money.
Oh yeah, multiple times.
Yes.
It is the most.
The Liberty Memorial.
Yes.
And the World War I Museum are amazing. If you're ever in Kansas City, you should go there. It's like jaw dropping. No question.
It is
it's unbelievable, the artifacts they have.
And the way they set it up. I mean, it's so user friendly. It's one of the museums. So
now
I think what we go ahead and end it with.
Well, I know who I want to have a drink with.
Oh, okay.
But this would explain why halfway through my face was beating red and as hot as could be. I was like, oh yeah, gin. I think I know who I'm going to have a drink with, but I'm going to cheat.
Okay.
I'm going to cheat just a little bit because I would like to have a drink with a panel of 3. And
Okay.
and here's and I think it'll perfectly match where we were trying to end this. I want to have a drink with Franz Joseph, Kaiser Wilhelm, and Nicholas II. Because the 3 of them were emperor. They were also cousins. They knew each other, and throughout this process, they were writing letters to each other.
Right.
Good.
But there's a 4th player, right? That the King of England, they all of them share a grandmother.
Yes.
Victoria is their grandmother.
This is European history at its
Well,
best.
she has what, 8 or 9 children, and
Okay.
she
Oh,
is
wow.
known as the mother of European royalty. She
Yep.
marries all of them off. So one of her daughters is the Empress of Russia. One of them marries the Emperor of Germany. One of them is like the King of England.
Right.
Swear to God, Google this. Look at the photo of the 3 of them.
Yeah.
It's the shallowest gene pool.
And remember, you're not going to marry somebody who isn't royalty.
Right.
And when you're all related,
hence blue bloods, right? Hence blue bloods.
right?
But what I would really love to talk to them about is you guys were communicating. You know each other well enough. I've even heard, and you guys probably could correct me if I'm wrong here, but I've even heard that Kaiser Wilhelm at some point said, look, I would rather not do this, but this is out of my hands now because the military had so much control over things in Germany. And Nicholas was like, well, I can't back out now, and I would love to know what that today it would be like a text or a phone call, but back then they're writing letters to each other. And I just can't imagine what was going on in
the
there.
time that would take to get the letters.
Well, yeah, right. And and you're just waiting for this thing to explode.
All sorts of stuff like this. They spent summers growing up together.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're
Right.
really close initially.
And imagine that.
But the Kaiser has, separated himself a little bit. He's a big fan of his mother, so he turns anti-British. And
interesting.
But you also remember that, and then we'll touch on this. We'll start. Most of these countries in Europe now have war departments, right?
Yeah.
Run by generals.
Mm-hmm.
So Germany, when he says it's out of my hands, there's a war machine, right?
Right. And
Russia doesn't necessarily have the war machine.
Okay.
The Tsar is going to be leading his troops, which is going to be a whole thing. We'll talk about that when we start. But there's a he can't get out.
And the idea of the cabinet goes clear back to George III, who lost the colonies, right? Because he was German. Well, George I was really German, but they were all German, but they couldn't speak English. So these departments that comes about because of
this is why I dropped out of European history. This is why I went U.S. history.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
It is a little Game of Thronesy though. There's so much of that.
It is also, you know what? I teach this about this, but it's one of those moments I think for most people. It seems to be sort of the advent of modern. So if you've learned about modern history, they've all heard of it. They all know something about it. Yeah. So it piques their interest, right? I think everybody, right? It's something we all kind of video, documentaries about it, Ken Burton, all those,
Yeah.
But it's just so fascinating.
The influence Europe had worldwide, right? Is you pick the country is unbelievable.
But the players, the idea of players. So I also teach international relations, and the idea of actors and the importance of single actors. And in this case, these guys were, at one point, some points, very, very important. At other points, helpless.
Yeah.
It's wild,
I love that.
Yeah.
Responsible and yet somewhat helpless.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think we'll go ahead and call it.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess our next episode will be the start of the war, right? We'll kind of go through the format. We'll talk about some important battles, what you remember, the consequences of the war, which we are still feeling a little bit today, right? It does not end. And it's only, 100, and 10 years ago. Right. I mean, it's
keep in mind our episode on does history repeat itself, right? Because we did circle. Right? Yeah.
Boom. Right. Mic drop moment.
There it is.
Right.
History repeats itself.
Gentlemen, class
dismissed.
dismissed.
There it is.
Thanks for watching.